Rain pattered against the neon-soaked pavement, each droplet catching fragments of blue, pink, and yellow light before disappearing into the darkness. On Glass Lantern Walk, a barefoot woman moved with hypnotic precision, her body telling stories without words. Her chocolate skin glistened with sweat despite the cool evening air, each movement precise yet fluid, controlled yet free. The crowd gathered in a semicircle, sheltered under umbrellas, transfixed by her every motion. She wore simple black leggings and a cropped top adorned with colorful beads that clicked gently with each movement, adding percussion to the Afrobeats pulsing from her portable speaker. Across the street, a black convoy of luxury sedans slowed to a crawl. In the second car, Kang Tae-yoon sat motionless, his sharp eyes drawn away from the money exchange happening beside him. Through the tinted window, his gaze locked on the dancer. Something about her movements, so different from anything in his controlled world, held him captive. His associate nudged him, sliding a stack of bills across the leather seat. "The numbers check out. Shall we proceed with the elimination?" Tae-yoon didn't respond immediately. His fingers, adorned with a single black jade ring, the mark of the Black Viper, tapped thoughtfully against his knee. "Sir?" the associate pressed, glancing nervously at the muscle-bound enforcer sitting across from them. "The target has been identified. We need your confirmation." "Proceed," Tae-yoon finally said, his voice low and measured. But his eyes never left the dancer, even as his men discussed the violent business at hand. For the first time in his life, Kang Tae-yoon saw something he couldn't buy. Later that night, the same woman walked down a dimly lit alley, counting the night's meager earnings. 300,000 won. Decent, but not enough to both pay rent and send money home this month. Zuri Adekanla sighed, tucking the bills into a hidden pocket sewn into her dance bag. The click of footsteps behind her made her pause, but she didn't turn around immediately. Years of performing on streets across 3 continents had taught her to sense danger before it announced itself. "Nice show tonight," a female voice called out, the Korean words sharp with resentment. "Shame it has to be your last." Zuri slowly pivoted to face 3 local dancers she recognized from previous nights. The tallest one, with a sharp bob cut and sharper eyes, stood slightly ahead of the others. All wore the matching jackets of the Lantern Flames, a dance crew that had performed on Glass Lantern Walk long before Zuri arrived. "Glass Lantern Walk is for Korean performers," the leader said, pulling out a small knife that caught the dim light. "Not foreigners stealing our crowds." Zuri didn't flinch, though her heart rate quickened. "I'm just dancing." "There's room for everyone," the second woman sneered. "Our earnings dropped by half since you started performing here, taking money that should be ours." "People choose who to watch," Zuri replied calmly, subtly shifting her weight to the balls of her feet. "I don't force anyone." "Not anymore." The woman with the knife lunged forward with unexpected speed. In one fluid motion, Zuri sidestepped, caught the attacker's wrist, and twisted. The knife clattered to the ground, its metallic ring echoing in the narrow alley. With another precise movement, she swept the woman's legs from under her, a move she'd learned in Lagos Street self-defense classes long before she'd ever heard of Korea. The attacker hit the ground with a surprised grunt. Zuri stood over her fallen form, voice steady despite the adrenaline pumping through her system. "If you can't outdance me, don't out-threaten me." The other 2 women backed away, helping their friend to her feet. The leader's mascara ran down her cheeks, a mix of tears and rain, as she clutched her wrist. "You'll regret this," one hissed as they retreated. "No one touches Jinnah and gets away with it. No one." "Next time, bring better moves instead of knives," Zuri called after them, her confidence masking the trembling that began in her hands. What Zuri didn't see was the figure watching from the shadows of a recessed doorway. Tae-yoon observed the entire confrontation without expression, his driver standing respectfully behind him. It wasn't her ability to defend herself that captivated him. He'd seen plenty of street fighters with quick hands. It was her absolute composure, the total absence of fear or panic that set her apart. As the rain intensified, he returned to his car, nodding for the driver to proceed. A strange new sensation stirred within him. Not desire, not exactly. Something more elemental. A recognition, perhaps. "Sir?" his driver ventured, catching Tae-yoon's thoughtful expression in the rearview mirror. "Take me home, Sung-min," Tae-yoon replied, watching the city lights blur through rain-streaked windows, "and find out who she is." If you're enjoying this story, Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our new uploads. Leave a comment below telling us what you think might happen next. Now, let's continue with the story of the dancer and the man who controlled everything except his fascination with her. Who is she? Taeyoon asked the following morning, sliding a photo across his glass desk in the penthouse office overlooking Neon Harbor's shipping district. His head of intelligence, Minho, a slender man with wire-rimmed glasses and eyes that missed nothing, picked up the image of Zuri mid-dance, her arms extended, face captured in a moment of perfect joy. Zuri Adekunle, 26 years old, father Nigerian, mother Kenyan, been in Korea for 3 years on an artist visa, sponsored initially by the Pan-Asian Cultural Exchange. Taeyoon leaned back in his leather chair, hands steepled beneath his chin. Background? Minho consulted his tablet. Trained in traditional Nigerian dance forms before studying contemporary in Nairobi, won several regional competitions in East Africa. No criminal record, not even a parking ticket. Lives in a small apartment in the East District. Performs 5 nights a week on Glass Lantern Walk. Teaches children's dance classes twice weekly at Rainbow Studios. Financial situation? Barely making ends meet. Sends 60% of her earnings back to family in Lagos. Younger siblings' education, from what we can determine. Could easily get higher-paying contracts at clubs or corporate events, but she refuses deals that limit her creative control. This detail made Taeyoon pause, saw a slight crease forming between his eyebrows. Elaborate. Minho shuffled through his notes, clearly prepared for this line of questioning. 6 months ago, a wealthy businessman, Park Dae-ho, who owns the Midnight Lotus Club chain, offered to sponsor her. Exclusive contract, good money, regular performances. She walked away when he wanted to brand her performances to match his club's aesthetic. Insisted she wear revealing costumes, dance to specific music. Interesting, Taeyoon murmured, Sei tapping his jade ring against the desk. She values autonomy over security. Appears so. She's been approached by several venues but maintains independence, keeps ownership of her choreography, her image rights. I want surveillance, passive only, no interaction, Taeyoon ordered, his voice betraying nothing of his inner thoughts. Minho looked surprised, adjusting his glasses. Sir, if you want her, we can simply— Did I ask for your suggestions? Taeyoon's voice turned to ice, his eyes narrowing slightly. Minho bowed his head immediately. No, sir. Sorry, sir. Passive surveillance only. One more thing, Taeyoon added as his subordinate turned to leave, tablet clutched to his chest. Find me Madam Hyejin. The dance instructor? Minho couldn't hide his confusion, blinking rapidly behind his glasses. Is there a problem with my request? Taeyoon's tone remained neutral, but the underlying threat was clear. No, sir, right away. Sir! Minho backed out of the office, clearly puzzled, but wise enough not to ask questions. After he left, Taeyoon swiveled his chair to face the floor-to-ceiling windows. Below, cargo ships dotted the harbor, each one carrying goods that passed through his network. Some legally, many not. He'd built his empire methodically, inherited the foundation from his father, and expanded it tenfold through strategic brutality and calculated risk. Yet now he found himself preoccupied with a street dancer who had nothing he needed, offered no strategic advantage, presented no threat or opportunity to his business. The novelty of this interest unsettled him. 3 days later, Taeyoon stood in a private studio in an unmarked building he owned in the Arts District. He wore loose black clothing, his usual tailored suits abandoned for this unusual meeting. The elderly woman circling him carried a wooden cane that she occasionally tapped against the floor for emphasis, the sound echoing in the minimalist space. You waste my time, Madam Hyejin said, her voice sharp despite her 70-plus years. Her silver hair was pulled back in a severe bun, her posture perfect despite her age. I don't teach beginners, especially not men like you. I've paid 10 times your usual rate, Taeyoon replied calmly, watching her assess him with critical eyes. Money doesn't buy rhythm, Mr. Kang. She struck her cane against the floor, the crack making him blink. Why do you really want to learn Afro-Fusion dance? A man in your position? Taeyoon's face revealed nothing, though the question pierced closer to his unexamined motivations than he cared to admit. I appreciate things I don't understand. No, she said, stepping closer, fearlessly invading the personal space of a man others would be terrified to approach. Some men like you only appreciate things you control. Dance cannot be controlled. It must be surrendered to. She demonstrated a simple sequence, her elderly frame suddenly fluid and powerful. Despite her age, she moved with a precision and emotion that transformed her entirely. Now you! Taeyun attempted to mimic her movements. His body, trained for fighting, for intimidation, for projecting power, moved stiffly, mechanically. The rhythm escaped him, his muscles tense where they needed to flow. Again, she commanded, circling him like a hawk. He tried once more, frustration building as his body refused to cooperate with his mind's instructions. Again! She struck the floor with her cane. After the fifth attempt, Taeyun's composed exterior cracked. He stumbled during a pivoting movement and fell hard against the polished wooden floor, the impact jarring through his hip and shoulder. Madame Hijin stood over him, not offering a hand up. She slapped her cane against the ground beside his head. You don't control rhythm, you surrender to it. The words pierced him unexpectedly. Surrender, a concept foreign to everything he'd built his empire on. The Black Viper never surrendered, never yielded, never showed weakness. Stand up, she ordered. We begin again, and this time, stop fighting yourself. Later that night, Taeyun sat in his office overlooking Neon Harbor. The lights of ships and buildings reflected on the dark water, creating constellations of human commerce and ambition. On the desk before him lay photos of a lieutenant who had been skimming profits from their drug distribution channels for months. How shall we handle this, sir? His security chief, a broad-shouldered former Special Forces operative named Young-hoon, asked. The implied question, how severe should the punishment be? Taeyun studied the photos, noting the man's recent purchases. A new car, a gold watch, gifts for a girlfriend. There's small ambitions that would cost him dearly. Make an example of him. Break his hands first, Taeyun said, his voice detached. Ensure he can still speak to tell others why he's suffering. Yes, sir, Young-hoon nodded, understanding the message needed to be clear. Anything else? No cameras, no phones, nothing traceable. Of course, sir. As his men left to carry out the punishment, Taeyun rubbed his bruised hip from the fall earlier that day. The pain was minor, but the humiliation of failing at something as simple as a dance sequence lingered uncomfortably. Two lives now ran parallel, absolute control by day, humbling vulnerability by night. Something was changing inside him, and he wasn't sure he wanted to stop it. For 2 weeks, this pattern continued. Brutal business during daylight hours, approving shipments of contraband, negotiating territory with rival organizations, intimidating local officials. Then dancing lessons in the evenings, where Madame Hijin pushed him harder each time, showing no deference to his status or power. Your body lies, she told him during one particularly difficult session, after he'd managed a basic sequence, but without the fluid emotion she demanded. It says you are in control, but your eyes betray you. You are afraid. I'm not afraid of anything, Taeyun responded coldly, wiping sweat from his brow. Not of men, perhaps, not of violence or death. She stepped closer, her ancient eyes seeing through his careful facade. But of yourself, of what happens when the control slips, that terrifies you. He didn't respond, but the truth of her words burned uncomfortably. Again, she commanded, and this time, let go. That night, after a particularly tense meeting with Chinese partners, Taeyun found himself drawn back to Glass Lantern Walk. He dismissed his security detail, ignoring their protests, and walked the last few blocks alone, something the Black Viper never did. He watched Zuri dance from a distance, wearing nondescript clothing that helped him blend with the crowd. With his newly trained eye, he studied her movements with growing appreciation. The freedom in her expression, the complete surrender to the music. It was everything Madame Hijin had been trying to teach him, everything he lacked. Zuri's performance incorporated traditional African movements with modern influences, a physical storytelling that needed no translation. The crowd, larger than before, responded with genuine enthusiasm, dropping bills into her collection box. When her performance ended and the crowd dispersed, Taeyun found himself walking toward her before he'd consciously decided to approach. She was packing her small speaker into a backpack, her focus downward. You move like you're not afraid of falling, he said, stopping a respectful distance away. Zuri looked up, surprised but not startled. Her eyes, deep brown with flecks of amber, assessed him quickly. Falling isn't the problem, she replied, straightening up. Staying down is. He smiled slightly, struck by the wisdom in her response. I'm Taeyun. Zuri. She studied him with keen eyes, slinging her backpack over one shoulder. You're not here for an autograph. No. And you're not a talent scout. No. She shouldered her backpack, head tilting slightly. Then why are you here, Taeyun-si? You're dancing, he said honestly. It speaks a language I'm trying to understand. Zuri laughed, the sound surprisingly warm in the cool evening air. Most people just enjoy it. They don't try to analyze it. I'm not most people. Clearly? She began walking, and he fell into step beside her, maintaining a respectful distance. Where are you from? Your accent is pure Seoul, but there's something else there. My mother was from Busan, my father from here. I grew up between both worlds. It was more personal information than he'd shared with anyone in years. And you? Nigeria and Kenya, I hear. If she was surprised he knew this, she didn't show it, though her stride faltered almost imperceptibly. Lagos and Nairobi, yes. My father was a businessman from Nigeria who fell in love with my mother while working in Kenya. But I've been in Korea long enough that sometimes I dream in Korean. What brought you here specifically? He asked as they walked along the harbor, the moon reflecting on the water. A cultural exchange program initially. Then I fell in love with the contrast, the structured precision of Korean traditional arts against the spontaneity of street culture. There's a beautiful tension here. She glanced at him. What do you do, Taeyun-si, besides watch street dancers? He hesitated, then offered a partial truth. Import-export. Shipping, mostly. Sounds boring, she said with a slight smile. It can be, he admitted, surprised by how easily conversation flowed between them. But there are interesting challenges. They walked along the harbor, talking about cultural differences, music, movement. He asked about Afrobeats, and she explained the complex rhythms with passionate hand gestures, occasionally demonstrating a small movement to illustrate a point. She asked about Korean traditional dance, and he shared what little he knew from childhood memories, his mother's insistence that he understand his heritage. Migration changes you, she said at one point, looking out over the water. You leave pieces of yourself behind and collect new ones wherever you go. Almost like a dancer borrowing movements from different traditions. Sounds lonely, he observed, watching her profile in the moonlight. It can be, she admitted, her eyes reflecting the distant harbor lights. But loneliness isn't always bad. It teaches you who you are when no one's watching, when no one's applauding. This struck him. He'd never been truly alone, always surrounded by people who feared him, needed something from him, or sought to manipulate him. As they reached a street corner, where the harbor walk intersected with a busier road, she stopped. This is where I turn. I enjoyed talking with you, he said, realizing with surprise that it was true. Same, but I should be clear about something. Her expression grew serious, her posture straightening. If you're here to own something, it won't be me. I've turned down men with money before. Taeyun smiled, intrigued by her directness. I don't own people. Good, she said, though something in her eyes suggested she didn't entirely believe him. Good night, Taeyun-si. As she walked away, the irony of his words settled on his shoulders like a physical weight. He didn't own people. His entire empire was built on ownership, of territories, of businesses, of loyalties bought through fear. People might not be property on paper, but his world functioned on the premise that everyone and everything had a price. But as he returned to his car where Sungmin waited patiently, Taeyun realized with startling clarity that he had no desire to own Zuri Adekunle. He wanted to understand her, and that was entirely new territory. For the next 2 weeks, they fell into an unexpected pattern. Every third night after her performance, they would walk and talk along the harbor. He never revealed his true identity or business. She never asked for personal details beyond their conversations. It was a strange bubble of authenticity in lives otherwise defined by performance, his calculated intimidation, her artistic expression. Why dance? He asked her during one of their walks, genuinely curious. Zuri considered the question, taking it more seriously than most would. It's the most honest language I know. Words can lie easily. Bodies tell the truth, even when trying to deceive. But you choreograph? He countered. You plan the movements. Isn't that a form of control? Of construction? Yes and no. She demonstrated as they walked, her hands flowing through a sequence. The structure creates freedom, like how a riverbank doesn't control the water, it simply gives it direction, purpose. Meanwhile, Taeyun's dance lessons with Madame Hyejin continued. The elderly instructor remained brutal in her criticism, but he was improving. His body was learning to surrender, even as his mind resisted. "You dance like a man at war with himself," she told him one night, after he'd successfully completed a complex sequence, but without the emotional release she demanded. "Your body wants to flow. Your mind demands control. Until those align, you will never truly dance." The lesson ended with his muscles aching and mind unsettled. As he changed back into his business attire, Madame Hyejin approached him. "Why are you really here, Mr. Kang?" Night after night, submitting to an old woman's criticism, it's not just curiosity. Taeyun considered deflecting, but found himself answering honestly. "I saw someone dance with complete freedom. It made me realize how imprisoned I am in my own body, in my own life." Madame Hyejin nodded slowly. "Ah, the African dancer from Glass Lantern Walk." His head snapped up. "You know her? This city has few true dancers. We recognize each other." She tapped her cane thoughtfully. "Be careful, Mr. Kang. When you chase freedom, you might find more than you bargained for." In the syndicate, tensions were rising. His uncle, Elder Kang, a stern man in his 70s, who had guided the family business since Taeyun's father died, summoned him to the family compound, a traditional house hidden behind modern security in the hills overlooking the city. They sat in the courtyard garden, surrounded by carefully maintained bonsai trees that Elder Kang tended personally, the only gentle thing about him. "You've been distracted," the old man said, pouring traditional rice wine into small ceramic cups. "The lieutenants talk. They say the Black Viper has lost his bite." "The business is running smoothly," Taeyun replied calmly, accepting the wine with proper deference. "Profits are up 12% from last quarter." "Business, yes. Fear, no." Elder Kang's eyes narrowed, his wrinkled face hardening. "Jang Minsuk is testing boundaries. His men have been seen in our southern territory, approaching our clients directly." "I'll handle it," Taeyun said, sipping the wine without showing how the information disturbed him. Minsuk had been a rival for years, younger, more volatile, hungry for expansion. "Will you? Or will you be too busy with your dancing?" The word dripped with disdain. Taeyun's head snapped up, setting down his cup with more force than intended. "You've had me followed? I've had you protected," his uncle corrected sharply. "While you wander the streets without security, meeting with foreign women. Did you think I wouldn't notice? That others wouldn't see? The Black Viper, taking dance lessons like a schoolboy, walking the harbor with an African street performer?" "My personal time is my own," Taeyun said, struggling to keep his voice even. Elder Kang slammed his cup down, sock splashing onto the ancient wood table. "Not when you're the face of this organization. Everything you do reflects on all of us. Your father built this empire through discipline and fear, not by chasing dancers in the night." Taeyun stood, his face a careful mask despite the anger churning inside. "I'll take care of Minsuk. His intrusion will be addressed." "See that you do," his uncle said, remaining seated, "and end this distraction, whatever it is, before I end it for you." The threat hung in the air between them, clear despite its subtlety, but Taeyun had no intention of ending anything. That night, he met Zuri again after her performance, finding a strange peace in their conversations that he'd never experienced in his world of power and control. As they walked along the harbor, she spoke about a dance showcase she was organizing with other immigrant artists. "It's hard getting sponsorship," she admitted, frustration evident in her voice. "Korean businesses prefer Korean performers. We have incredible talents, dancers from Brazil, musicians from Senegal, visual artists from Cambodia, but getting visibility is an uphill battle." "I might know someone who could help," he offered carefully. "Some of my business connections sponsor arts events." She gave him a sideways glance, skepticism clear in her expression. "Thanks, but I'm not looking for favors or charity." "It wouldn't be." "It always is," she cut him off gently. "I've learned that lesson. Everything comes with strings, or especially money from businessmen who suddenly develop an interest in the arts." He wanted to tell her she was wrong, but wasn't she right about him? Wasn't his entire business model built on favors that became chains, on transactions that created obligation? "Not everything has to be transactional," he said, surprising himself with the sincerity in his voice. "That's a nice thought," she replied, "but not how the world works. At least, not in my experience." Before he could respond, a black Mercedes pulled alongside them, its engine purring softly. The tinted window lowered, revealing Jang Min-suk's smirking face. Handsome in a sharp, predatory way, his designer suit and slicked back hair a deliberately crafted image of success. Well, well, the Black Viper, out for an evening stroll with his latest acquisition. His voice carried artificial warmth that didn't reach his eyes. Zuri stiffened beside Taeyun. Black Viper? Min-suk laughed, the sound practiced and hollow. Oh, he didn't tell you? You're walking with Kang Taeyun, the most feared man in Neon Harbor. Every club, every shipment, every deal runs through him, or people have unfortunate accidents. Taeyun's face hardened, but before he could speak, Min-suk tossed a manila envelope onto the sidewalk at their feet. Enjoy your evening, Taeyun. I hope she's worth the distraction. With a mocking smile, he raised the window as the car pulled away smoothly. A heavy silence fell between them. Zuri bent and picked up the envelope, opening it to find photos. Surveillance shots of Taeyun watching her dance from his car, of their walks together, even one of him entering Madame Hyejin's studio. What is this? She asked, her voice deadly calm. Zuri, I can explain. Explain what? That you're some kind of gangster? That you've been, what, investigating me? Following me? Her eyes flashed with anger and something deeper, betrayal. It's not like that. He reached for the photos, but she pulled them away. Then what is it like? Her voice rose slightly. Who are you, really? He hesitated too long, struggling to find words that wouldn't confirm everything Min-suk had implied. Right. She thrust the photos against his chest. Whatever this is, it's done. Don't come to my performances. Don't wait for me afterward. Don't send help for my showcase. She turned to walk away, her posture rigid with anger. Zuri, wait! He reached for her arm, but stopped himself, knowing he had no right. She paused without turning back. Men like you think everything has a price, that everyone can be bought, owned, collected. I'm not a curiosity for your entertainment. With that, she walked away, leaving Taeyun standing alone with the damning photos in his hands, feeling a loss more profound than any business setback he'd ever experienced. Hey there! If you're enjoying this story so far, make sure you're subscribed to our channel. Hit that like button and leave a comment below telling us what you think about Taeyun and Zuri's situation. Your support means everything to us. Now, let's see what happens next as their worlds collide in unexpected ways. The damage was already spreading through Neon Harbor like poison in water. By the next evening, Zuri arrived at Glass Lantern Walk to find her usual crowd significantly smaller. As she prepared to dance, setting up her speaker and checking the playlist on her phone, she overheard whispers from passersby. That's her, the Mafia's new toy. I heard he bought her from Africa. She must be involved in something illegal. Why else would the Black Viper be watching her? Probably smuggling drugs through her dance group. The rumors stung like acid on bare skin. 3 years of building respect, of proving herself through her art alone, damaged in a single night by association. She danced anyway, pouring her anger and hurt into each movement. But the performance felt hollow with so few witnesses, so much suspicion. After a lackluster performance to a diminished audience, she checked her phone to find an email from a sportswear brand she'd been negotiating with for weeks. They were canceling their planned collaboration for her dance showcase. The reason cited, concerns about brand alignment and potential liability issues. Anger built inside her like a physical pressure. This was exactly why she guarded her independence so fiercely, why she'd walked away from easier money in the past. Men with power changed the air around you, made everything you'd earned yourself seem like their gift instead. And when that power was toxic, as Taeyun's clearly was, it poisoned everything it touched. Her phone buzzed with a text from the dance studio where she taught children's classes twice a week. Ms. Adekunle, can you come early tomorrow to speak with management before class? Ao Jin. She knew what that conversation would entail. Parents wouldn't want their children taught by someone associated with organized crime, regardless of the truth. The next night, Taeyun came to Glass Lantern Walk. He stood at the back of the nearly empty performance space, watching as Zuri danced with fierce determination despite the absence of her usual crowd. Her movements were sharper, angrier, but no less beautiful, perhaps even more compelling in their raw emotion. When she finished and the scattered applause faded, she spotted him immediately. She grabbed her bag and walked directly toward him, eyes blazing with a fire he recognized from their first encounter in the alley. You don't get to ruin my name because you're curious, she said, loud enough for the few bystanders to hear. That wasn't my intention, he replied quietly, acutely aware of the damage his presence had caused. Your intentions don't matter. How your effect does. She gestured around the empty space where dozens of viewers usually gathered. My brand deal canceled, my teaching job suspended. Rumors I'm involved with organized crime, that I'm your property, your entertainment, your smuggling mule. Her voice cracked slightly on the last words. I can fix this, he offered, the solution seeming obvious from his position of power. That's the problem, she shot back, anger reigniting. You think everything is fixable with power? Ah, with money, with intimidation. But my reputation, my hard work? You can't just throw money at that and make it right. She turned to walk away, but he caught her wrist gently. Zuri, please. Let go of me, she said, her voice low and dangerous. He immediately released her, recognizing the boundary he'd overstepped. Whatever game you were playing, it's over, she continued, backing away. You've seen enough of the exotic dancer. You've had your cultural experience. Stay away from me. Her voice dropped lower. Before you destroy what little I have left. As she disappeared into the crowd, Taeyun felt something unfamiliar twist inside him, something that felt dangerously like regret. Not the calculated remorse of a strategic error, but something personal and painful. The following days brought cascading consequences beyond Zuri's damaged reputation. Word spread through the syndicate about Taeyun's public humiliation. The Black Viper, so rejected by a street performer. It was the kind of story that undermined the fear his position required. Jang Min-suk, sensing weakness, began making bolder moves. His men appeared in Black Viper territories openly now, approaching business owners about alternative protection arrangements. 2 shipments were intercepted. Clearly inside information was flowing to rival organizations. And Elder Kong, furious at the public embarrassment, called an emergency council meeting at the family compound. Sha Taeyun entered the traditional meeting room to find all 7 syndicate lieutenants assembled, along with his uncle seated at the head of the low table. The atmosphere was heavy with judgment. Your obsession with this foreign dancer has weakened our position, his uncle declared, not bothering with pleasantries. Jang Min-suk openly challenges us now. Businesses that have paid us tribute for decades are questioning their arrangements. You have brought shame to the Black Viper name. Taeyun knelt at his place at the table, his face impassive despite the public rebuke. The lieutenants watched him closely, assessing his reaction, measuring his strength. What do you have to say for yourself? Elder Kang demanded, his weathered hands flat on the table. Taeyun looked around at the faces of his organization, men who followed him out of fear rather than loyalty, men who had never questioned what they'd become, what he'd become. Min-suk must be dealt with, he acknowledged, his voice steady. I'll handle it personally. His uncle seemed satisfied with this response, a cruel smile flickering across his face. Good. And the dancer? Something hardened in Taeyun's expression, a subtle shift that the more observant lieutenants noticed. She's not part of this. Everything is part of this, Elder Kong insisted, slamming his hand on the table. Your distraction has created vulnerability. The woman knows things, has seen you, been seen with you. Such liabilities must be eliminated. She will be left alone, Taeyun's voice cut like steel, the threat unmistakable despite his controlled tone. That is non-negotiable. Murmurs rippled through the room at his defiance. Elder Kang's face flushed with anger. You forget yourself, the old man hissed. No one is untouchable. No one. Taeyun held his uncle's gaze, unwavering. Touch her, and our business relationship ends. So permanently. The threat hung in the air, its implications clear to everyone present. The Black Viper controlled too many critical operations, had too many connections that even Elder Kong couldn't access. Without Taeyun, the syndicate would falter. Handle Min-suk, Elder Kong finally said, breaking the tense standoff. Prove your commitment to this family. Then we will discuss your unusual attachments. Later that night, alone in his penthouse, Taeyun stared out at the neon skyline of the city he controlled. From this height, people were mere specks, faceless entities moving through structures of his making. Madame Hyejin's words echoed in his mind. You don't control rhythm, you surrender to it. His phone buzzed with reports that Min-suk's men had seized one of their smaller nightclubs, roughing up the manager, who had refused to switch allegiances. Action was expected. Blood was required. The rhythm of power and control demanded it. But for the first time in his life, Taeyun questioned the dance he'd been performing his entire life. The choreography of intimidation, violence, and control that had been passed down to him. The routine he'd perfected, but never chosen. Meanwhile, Zuri sat in her small apartment, scrolling through flight options back to Nairobi. Her laptop screen illuminated her face in the darkened room, highlighting the exhaustion in her eyes. 3 years of building something in Korea, not just a career, but a life, crumbling because of a man's interest. Her phone rang. The dance studio, where she taught children's classes twice a week. The conversation was brief and predictable. "I'm sorry, Miss Adekunle," the manager said apologetically, "but with these rumors about your associations, parents are concerned. We'll have to terminate your teaching position effective immediately." After hanging up, Zuri threw her phone against the wall in frustration. He watching as the screen cracked. Another expense she couldn't afford. Everything she'd built, crumbling because of a man's interest. The story of too many women, repeated across cultures and continents. She sank to the floor, allowing herself 5 minutes of tears. No more. Then she wiped her eyes, retrieved her damaged phone, and booked the cheapest flight to Nairobi for the following week. It was time to start over. Again. The next morning, Taeyun made his move, but not the one expected of him. He called his 3 most trusted advisors to a secure location in an art gallery he owned, away from syndicate eyes and ears. Minho, his intelligence officer, Young-hoon, his security chief, and Seung-ha, his financial advisor, stood awkwardly among modern sculptures, confused by the unusual meeting place. "We're going legitimate," he announced without preamble, his decision made during a sleepless night. Young-hoon stared in disbelief. "Sir? I'm liquidating our interests in illegal shipping." Immediately, Taeyun's voice was calm, as though discussing a minor business adjustment rather than a fundamental transformation. "But that's our most profitable channel," Seung-ha protested, already calculating losses on his mental balance sheet. "We'd lose millions, the entire eastern route." "Yes," Taeyun acknowledged with a slight nod. "We will." For the next hour, he outlined his plan with methodical precision. The Black Viper organization would maintain its legal businesses, real estate, to nightclubs, import/export, while systematically dismantling its criminal operations. Those loyal to the old ways would be compensated and released. Those willing to transition would be retrained, repositioned in legitimate enterprises. And most surprising of all, he announced the launch of a new venture. Ember District, a creative label and performance space dedicated to supporting independent artists, particularly immigrants and fusion performers. The plan included a physical location on Glass Lantern Walk, funding for performances, and a transparent organizational structure that would generate legitimate profits while supporting artistic independence. "This is insane," Young-hoon finally said, breaking the stunned silence that followed Taeyun's presentation. "Elder Kang will never approve. The lieutenants will revolt." "I'm not asking for approval," Taeyun replied, his quiet certainty more intimidating than any show of force. "This is happening with or without the elder's blessing." "Sir, with respect," Minho ventured cautiously, "is this about the dancer? Because if so, this is about legacy," Taeyun cut him off, "about recognizing that power without purpose is hollow. I've spent my life making people fear me. What has it brought me? Nothing of value." He paused, looking each man in the eye. "But this isn't a request for philosophical debate. This is a directive. You're either with me in this transition, or you take your compensation and go." The 3 men exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. Finally, Young-hoon spoke for the group. "We're with you, sir, but it won't be simple or bloodless." "I'm counting on your expertise to minimize both complications," Taeyun replied. "Ember District launches in 10 days. Make it happen." As his advisors left to begin the difficult process of transformation, Taeyun placed a call to his private accountant. "Transfer 5 million won to Chasing Dreams Foundation," he instructed. "Anonymous donation. Earmark it for immigrant artist grants." It wasn't for her. It wasn't to impress her. It was the first step towards something he barely understood himself, a rhythm he was only beginning to feel. The syndicate erupted in chaos when word spread of Taeyun's decisions. Lieutenants took sides, some sensing opportunity and change, others clinging to tradition. Elder Kang summoned him to an emergency meeting, where the old man's face was contorted with rage, veins standing out on his temples. "You dishonor your father's legacy," he shouted, pacing the traditional room like a caged animal. "Decades of building this organization, and you dismantle it for what? For her? For some foreign dancer who wouldn't even speak to you?" "This isn't about Zuri," Taeyun replied calmly, maintaining perfect posture despite his uncle's outburst. "She simply helped me see what I was becoming. What I'd already become." "Weak!" his uncle spat, stopping to lean across the table. "You've grown weak, sentimental. Your father would be ashamed." "My father died afraid," Taeyun countered, a truth never spoken aloud in this household. "Surrounded by people who served him out of fear, not respect, not love. That's not the legacy I choose." "Legacy?" Elder Kang laughed bitterly. "You speak of legacy while destroying everything we built?" "I'm transforming it," Taeyun corrected. Power can be used differently, to create rather than control." "Naive philosophy," his uncle dismissed with a wave. "Reality will educate you quickly." Taeyun stood, indicating the conversation was ending on his terms. "I'm not asking for permission. I'm informing you out of respect for our family connection. Ember District launches next week on Glass Lantern Walk. You're welcome to attend or not. But this is happening." As he turned to leave, his uncle called after him, voice dropping to a dangerous register. "Jang Minsuk will destroy you. He's already gathering support from our own ranks. Your transformation has created a power vacuum he's eager to fill." Taeyun paused at the door. Let him try. The threat was real and immediate. Within days, 3 of Taeyun's lieutenants defected to Minsuk's organization, taking valuable information with them. Security reports indicated a possible coordinated attack on Ember District's launch event. Anonymous threats were delivered to contractors working on the venue renovations. The old Taeyun would have struck first, eliminated threats before they materialized, sent bodies as messages, created fear so profound that no one would dare challenge him. But that wasn't the path he was choosing now. Instead, he ordered increased security, legitimate security, with proper licensing and training. He filed for permits, met with city officials, sponsored neighborhood improvements around Glass Lantern Walk. He reached out to local business owners, offering partnership rather than protection rackets. Each legitimate step felt foreign, but strangely liberating. 3 days before the launch, he stood in Madame Heejin's studio for what would likely be their final session. The elderly instructor watched as he completed a complex sequence with newfound fluidity, his movements no longer fighting the rhythm, but flowing with it. "You've changed," she observed, leaning on her cane. "Yes. Not just your dancing." She tapped her cane thoughtfully against the floor. "Something deeper." Taeyun met her gaze directly. "I've spent my life pursuing control. It made me powerful but empty. And now? Now I'm learning to surrender, to rhythm, to change, to the possibility of loss." Madame Heejin smiled for the first time since they'd met, the expression transforming her severe features. "Then you finally learned to dance. Not well, mind you," she added with characteristic bluntness. "But honestly, that's the beginning." As launch day approached, Taeyun sent a single invitation to Zuri's apartment. Not a demand, not a grand gesture, simply information about Ember District's opening and a handwritten note. No obligation, just thought you should know. Zuri received the invitation the day before her scheduled flight back to Nairobi. She'd almost finished packing. Her 3 years in Korea reduced to 2 suitcases and a carry-on. Most of her dance equipment had been sold to cover the flight cost and outstanding rent. The invitation made her pause, especially when she recognized the address. Glass Lantern Walk, the very place where she had built her small following. Her first instinct was to tear it up, but curiosity led her to search online for information about Ember District. What she found surprised her: a legitimate creative label focused on immigrant artists and fusion performers. The business registration was public, the funding transparent. News articles mentioned Kang Taeyun's surprising career pivot and commitment to cultural development. One quote in particular caught her attention. "I'm not interested in owning artists. I want to create space where they can own themselves." It sounded too good to be true. Another rich man's game, perhaps. And yet the documentation seemed legitimate. The permits were filed. The renovations at Glass Lantern Walk were real. She'd seen them beginning the previous week. She set the invitation on her nightstand, still undecided as she continued packing for a journey she wasn't entirely sure she wanted to make. Launch night arrived with unexpectedly perfect weather, clear skies and a gentle breeze carrying the scent of the ocean. Glass Lantern Walk had been transformed with additional lighting, a proper sound system, and a simple but elegant stage. Unlike typical VIP events in Neon Harbor, there were no velvet ropes, no exclusive sections. The space remained public, open to anyone passing by. Taeyoon stood on the sidelines, dressed in a simple black suit without tie or flash. Jung-hoon approached with a security update, speaking quietly. "We've identified several of Minsuk's men in the crowd," he reported. "Not making moves yet, just observing. Waiting." "Let them watch," Taeyoon replied calmly. "But keep eyes on them." At precisely 8 p.m., Taeyoon took to the stage. The crowd, a mix of curious locals, artists, and media, quieted as he approached the microphone. Many filmed with their phones, eager to capture the notorious Black Viper's unexpected new venture. "Thank you for coming," he began simply, his voice steady. "Ember District begins tonight?" But its story started weeks ago when I witnessed something that changed me. Art that exists for itself, not for profit or control. He scanned the crowd, not expecting to see her, yet hoping nonetheless. "I built my life around control," he continued, choosing honesty over pretense. "It made me feared, not respected, not whole." He took a deep breath. "Tonight, I'm not just launching a business. I'm walking away from the syndicate leadership that has defined me, from the fear I've used as currency." Murmurs rippled through the audience. Such public declarations were unprecedented in their world, where business transitions happened in shadows, often marked by unexplained disappearances. Ember District will support artists without controlling them, fund creativity without owning it, because I finally understand that true power isn't about what you control, it's about what you create. As he spoke these words, he spotted movement at the back of the crowd. Jang Minsuk had arrived, flanked by his lieutenants, their matching black suits and earpieces making no attempt at subtlety. Their eyes locked across the space, a silent challenge. Taeyoon didn't flinch or alter his speech. "And to demonstrate that commitment, I want to share something personal." He nodded to the sound engineer, who started the music, a carefully crafted fusion of traditional Korean rhythms and Afrobeat, created by a local producer specifically for this moment. And Taeyoon began to dance. Not with the precision of a master, but with the honesty of someone who had discovered a new language. His body moved through the sequences Madame Heejin had drilled into him, surrendering to the rhythm in a way that felt like the most honest thing he'd ever done publicly. The crowd watched in stunned silence. The notorious Black Viper, a man known for ruthless business tactics and intimidating presence, dancing on a public street corner. It was unprecedented, vulnerable, real. When the sequence ended, the silence was deafening. Then, from the back of the crowd, a single person began to clap. Others joined. The applause built until it filled the space. As Taeyoon caught his breath, he noticed a figure moving through the crowd toward the stage. Zuri. She dressed in a simple outfit accented with traditional Nigerian fabric, her face unreadable. She stepped onto the stage without invitation. The crowd, recognizing her, grew quiet again. "That was brave," she said, her voice carrying in the silence. "But bravery isn't the same as change." "I know," he acknowledged. "Words and gestures are easy," she continued, addressing him directly, but aware of the audience witnessing their exchange. "Sustained transformation isn't." "Also true." She studied him for a long moment, then turned to address the crowd. "I don't know if people can really change, but I believe in giving space for the possibility." She nodded to the DJ, who started a new track, a pulsing Afrobeat rhythm that immediately energized the space. Then she began to dance. Her signature style, powerful and fluid. She danced alone at first, establishing her rhythm, her independence. Then, subtly, she created space beside her. An invitation, not a demand. Taeyoon stepped into that space. They moved together, not touching, but complementing. His more structured movements against her fluid ones. Korean precision meeting African freedom. Not a perfect synchronization, but a respectful conversation. The crowd's energy shifted, feeding off the unexpected collaboration. Even Minsuk's men watched with reluctant fascination. When the music ended, the applause was immediate and genuine. People surged forward, eager to talk about the performance, about Ember District, about what they'd just witnessed. In the commotion, Minsuk approached Taeyun, his expression unreadable. "Impressive show," he said flatly, "but don't think this changes anything. You've made yourself weak, vulnerable." Taeyun met his gaze steadily. "Perhaps, or perhaps I've found strength you don't recognize." "We'll see," Minsuk replied, turning to leave. "We'll see how long this transformation lasts when reality hits." As the crowd thinned and the event wound down, Taeyun found Zuri helping to pack up sound equipment. "You came," he said simply. "I was curious," she admitted, coiling a cable with practiced efficiency. "And my flight isn't until tomorrow." "About that," he began cautiously. "Ember District could use someone with your talent. As a performer, a teacher, a choreographer, whatever role you want to define." "I don't work for men who've lied to me," she replied, but without the anger of their last encounter. "Fair enough." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object, a brass anklet charm shaped like a lantern. "I saw this at a market last week. It reminded me of where we met." He held it out to her. Not a diamond, not a key to a luxury apartment, just a simple token with meaning. "I don't want to own your light, Zuri," he said quietly. "I just want to stand where it shines." She looked at the charm, then back at him. "And if it gets too bright, too independent, too much, then I'll adjust my eyes," he replied. "Not ask you to dim yourself." Zuri took the charm, turning it over in her fingers. "I'm still leaving tomorrow." "I understand." She tucked the charm into her pocket. "But maybe I'll come back, on my terms, if this change you're making proves real." "I hope you will." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Then, without theatrics, she said, "The stage is still set up. One more dance before they take it down?" It wasn't a declaration of love. It wasn't forgiveness. But it was a beginning. They returned to the stage, now empty of spectators, except for a few stragglers. The DJ, packing up his equipment, smiled and put on one last track. A melody that blended Korean traditional instruments with West African percussion. They danced together again, this time with more freedom, more trust. Not as performers for an audience, but as two people finding a new language between them. When they finished, Zuri looked out over Glass Lantern Walk, then back at Taeyun. "I still don't know if I believe people can change completely." "I don't either," he admitted, "but I'm willing to try, every day." "Then don't dim when it gets too bright," she said, echoing his earlier metaphor. They walked back toward the main street, side by side, but not touching. The neon lights of Neon Harbor reflected in puddles from an earlier rain shower, creating mirrors of color at their feet. "Power built his empire," Zuri observed thoughtfully, "but rhythm rebuilt his name." Taeyun smiled at the poetic assessment. "And maybe his heart too." As they reached the corner where their paths would separate, no dramatic kiss sealed their story. No promises were exchanged. Just two people who had found something unexpected in each other, standing at the beginning of a possibility. "Your flight tomorrow," Taeyun said. "Will you be on it?" Zuri touched the pocket where she'd placed the lantern charm. "I don't know yet." "Whatever you decide," he said. "The stage at Ember District remains open. Your space to claim or leave as you choose." She nodded, appreciating the absence of pressure. "Good night, Taeyun." "Good night, Zuri." Behind them, Glass Lantern Walk glowed with the promise of transformation. Ahead lay unknown rhythms, waiting to be discovered together or apart. The choice still unwritten, the dance still unfinished. Thank you for watching our story of transformation, surrender, and finding strength in vulnerability. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that subscribe button, like this video, and share it with friends who appreciate stories about real change. Leave a comment below telling us your favorite moment or what you think happens next for Taeyun and Zuri. Your support helps us create more content like this. Until next time, remember that true power isn't what you control, it's what you create.